prepared for this tournament with RDU, and they're playing dramatically different decks. So Neirea sort of sticking with what worked for him last time. XHope, he's going to be playing that unusual priest deck, the only priest deck in the entire tournament in this first game.
That's right. So XHope is not only carrying the burden of China, but all priest players and Brian Kibler's hope along with them. Let's go into game number 1, Priest versus the Jade Druid. This is a matchup that the Priest should be able to take down. We talk about how Druid has a difficult time with hard removal. Divine Spirit Inner Fire is some of the hardest minions for Druid to kill. So if this is a matchup that XHope can get off on the right foot, this is it right here.
Yeah, and he's just going to go in right away, coining out the Radiant Elemental to power and shield it. This enables him to discount all of these spells in his hand, and frankly, his deck is extremely spell heavy, so this is an important engine to his deck. And Neirea, even with that Wrath in his hand, does not have the damage to remove the Radiant Elemental right away.
All right, well, you know, Neirea can budget it over a couple of turns, and he knows his opponent has committed the coin to it. What he is really afraid of is what happens if Divine Spirit comes out, or even the worst case scenario, Divine Spirit Inner Fire as quickly as turn 2, and then you're going to get punished for it. And XHope can get it because he has Shadow Visions and Inner Fire. He can dig for the Divine Spirit and hit for 10 damage next turn.
Yeah, this is really the power of this style of deck. We've seen Priest have somewhat of a resurgence in the ungoro metagame. Not necessarily in the tournament metagame, as this is the only copy of it showing up in this event at least, but a huge part of that is Shadow Vision, the flexibility it gives. In particular, the flexibility to get that Divine Spirit plus Inner Fire so much more consistently. And yeah, Neirea is going to respect that threat and just fire off the full damage Wrath. XHope, though, he has the Binding Heal to just send it back up to full health, and he finds what's hiding behind that? It is, all right.
And well, that's going to be a huge amount of pressure coming up from XHope.
We got ourselves a turn 2 10-10 here.
And I mean, that is quite the minion. Neirea does have ways to stall with Feral Rage, but that's not going to be able to solve the long-term issue of how do I deal with this 10-10 without any mulches or naturalizers or any other form of hard removal we used to have.
And look at this crowd. I love the energy of this crowd responding to particularly the good moments of fortune and the big plays from the Chinese players. It's just awesome to see their passion for Hearthstone.
Now, Neirea's not out of this just yet. Yeah, he's going to take a lot of damage, but maybe an Innervate can just start piecing things together for him. If he can put walls between him and that 10-10, but XHope's not going to slow down anytime soon. Wow! Oh my goodness. You go for the extra 3 damage here, or do you think you just want to save it?
I don't think so. I think you just hold on to Inner Fire. If you pick up another buff, you can maybe make an additional big minion. And Nourish is great against Control Priest. We were going slow, but XHope is just chunking for 10 damage a turn here. And he's just got the Feral Rage for armor. This is looking pretty bad for Neirea.
Yeah, he's just trying to stay composed, but you know, he can't even help but glance over to how hyped the audience is. That is
not quite lethal. You can go to 15.
Very close.
So you'd have 18 damage. That is exactly 1 damage off lethal right now.
Any kind of health buff would do it. So not quite just yet. XHope gonna step back and just, breathe for a little bit, realize that, it's not over yet, and if I'm careless, I could throw this game away because I am all in on this board, essentially. But maybe he isn't anymore. Injured Blade Master and Cabal Songstealer are meaty minions themselves, so XHope could also go wider onto the board here.
One of the big things here for XHope, because he has that Songstealer in his hand, even the taunt, like say there were an Innervate to put out the Jade Behemoth next turn, that will do nothing to stop his gigantic Radiant Elemental here. So he can just go ahead and attack for 13 here, and he can just push through the additional damage with Songstealer next turn, and even potentially just save the Inner Fire. Somehow something went wrong, and there really, frankly, isn't a way forward to. There's no mulch in Druid these days.
That's right. Really no hard removal. Druid had access to a couple of weird ones back in the day, like Poison Seeds, or mulch, of course, was kind of a replacement for Big Game Hunter. And in this case, XHope just trying to make sure he doesn't throw away the game if he's careless at all. He's just evaluating everything, realizing Druid most likely will gain 1 armor. And Neirea is going to concede a quick game number 1 over to XHope.
And the crowd loves it. We see the Thundersticks going, the cheers for the hometown hero. XHope, in fact, lives in Shanghai and has played on this stage before. In fact, this exact arena.
That's right. For the Gold Series in 2016, XHope performed very well, so he felt like, in terms of his comfort level, he was right at home, just like you said, Kibler. However, now that he's in the elimination match, I'm pretty sure all that comfort advantage has gone out the window because he's playing for a lot more than himself. Him, as well as the rest of the players from China, are also fighting for their country.
The Chinese fans are crazy passionate. We're going to be 500% more amped up than usual to play at home.
Blizzard has a huge fan base in China, so when Hearthstone came out, it became incredibly popular. The tickets are sold out, so the crowd is awesome for this tournament.
This tournament it means more to me in China because usually we play in other places, maybe North America. This time a lot of Chinese will come.
Every Chinese player here wants to win. There's a pressure to perform well, but we'll try not to think about the pressure when we play our matches.
Unfortunately, none of the Chinese players made it to the top 4 in the Bahamas.
China will have to try again in the spring.
This is a huge opportunity to play with so many tough players. If I can somehow make the top 4, I'll prove to the fans that I'm a strong competitor.
I think China region in this tournament, I think it may be the second strongest region. So I feel confident about our region. Hearthstone bring me a lot of happiness, and it's really worth it to play this game.
A ton of pressure, maybe self-inflicted if you look at it. These guys really take upon it themselves to prove that China is not a region to be messed with. Historically, throughout all of Hearthstone's young history, Kibler, we've seen China always try to challenge other regions, always try to pit themselves. China versus Europe, China versus Korea, China versus America, and yet they've a lot of times, more often than not, come out on the losing end. But they always felt like they are a region that is some of the best. They always said that we're right behind Europe. We think we're the second best region in the world, and we're maybe even threatening the top spot. Not the case right now in HCT Shanghai.
Yeah, and this is an opportunity for the Chinese players to make the best of home field advantage. Normally, when the Chinese players compete internationally, they have to travel very far, and they suffer from jet lag. Now it's, in fact, their opponents who are the ones who may need to fight through additional challenges. But the Chinese players are not really taking advantage of that. They're in really rough straits here. But XHope does have an edge overall in this match with a 1-game lead. And we were actually talking before the match, this may be one of the most important matchups in this entire series.
Right, and we kind of analyze how the bans and all the deck lists line up here. This matchup is relatively even. There are a couple of cards that swing it back and forth. We're talking about the oozes and the other techs that might disrupt weapons or any other sorts of those cards. But what really comes down to it is because this matchup is not really decisively favored for one deck or the other compared to mirror matches, it could end up swinging the series.
Well, this early game is definitely in favor of Neirea, getting an uncontested mana worm along with arcane intellect to just accelerate his resources. He has a discounted fireball from Primordial Glyph. This is a very good draw from Neirea, and XHope is kind of struggling to deal with it.
Yeah, Taunt Warrior tends to win the matchup in 2 different ways, either pressuring the mage through just, the ability to get the Ragnaros hero power online very quickly and mage can't really handle it, or being able to outlast their damage and all their pressure. Mage has a lot of ways to get resources. We're talking about, this kind of way of either generating resources or even shutting down card draw. Shutting down card draw by polymorphing the Acolyte might actually be something Neirea thinks about because Taunt Warrior really needs to get that quest finished. And if they don't have the card draw to back it up, they're often just a really bad mid-range warrior.
There's also the Kabbalist Tome here, which has to be the decision that Neirea is debating here, because the Kabbalist Tome, we mentioned, this is really a resource battle sometimes, and being able to pick up a Kabbalist Tome can get you even more burn, even more ways to interact with their taunt minions, force your minions through it. Yeah, that is what Neirea picks. He's going to go ahead and take the Kabbalist Tome, and going to spend the 4 damage to ensure that XHope does not get multiple cards off the Acolyte.
I like it. I think he's reading his hand. He says, I have, first of all, I have 2 Fireballs, Firelands Portal, and a Vanalic Straza. I think Kabbalist Tome might be able to get follow-up burn and be able to get the distance there. Maybe he doesn't even have to play a very board control style if he loses his minions. He can play the classic burn style or freeze mage comparison that people usually make with this deck.
Yeah, and the real difference in the Taunt Warrior versus many traditional control warriors, you don't have that much armor gain in this deck. There are 2 copies of Armor Smith, which can very much accelerate XHope's armor gain if he does have whirlwind effects with a significant board. But you don't have shield blocks. You don't have any real late game stuff like Justicar Trueheart that used to be obviously something that squeezes the mage deck's burn out of reach. So in fact, in many cases, you see the Taunt Warrior players, that is a bad tome. But he does have freezing potion and the Frost to go with the Shatter, but he was hoping to get burned. He was hoping to get more card advantage. That was a very weak tome for Neirea.
Yeah, awkward, and I think he's at 10 cards as well, so he has to use one of these cards immediately. And what seems to be the candidate is Freezing Potion. I mean, 0 mana, gain 3 health. There's worse cards out there than Hearthstone, I believe. So, maybe tossing that, and then you can utilize Frost Nova and Shatter at a different time if you need to.
One interesting thing about this matchup that we actually didn't comment on in the early turns is that a lot of players argue that from the warrior perspective, you should mulligan your quest because it's so important to be able to answer the opposing early minions.
I'm very familiar with this debate.
And XHope chose to keep the quest, and he did struggle to deal with the Mana Worm, at least initially, because he did not have a Fiery War Axe, which is so powerful in those stages of the game.
You'd be surprised. That debate is actually still going on to this day of whether or not you mulligan the quest against this specific mage deck. Ooh. And a lot of people wonder, like, well, how do you win? The idea is to really drain the amount of resources like we talked about.
Yeah, and resources are not something Neirea is lacking, though. Picks up Medivh, which is a very powerful card in this matchup.
Huge. That's going to be what really sets up the mage to win. If they can't do it through Alexstrasza and Burn, they can just go through minion pressure. Firelance Portal summons a 7 mana and 5 mana minion, which that alone might win you the game on top of Medivh's body. Yeah,
and XHope doesn't really have the greatest hand in terms of being able to deal with all of that. He does have a Brawl, and he does have a Curator to get more resources, though.
Right. Neirea's coming up on a couple of important pivotal turns here. How does he utilize his resources? He's got 3 fireballs, but there's an armor smith on the board. So if you kind of leave it up to your opponent to control the board for a bit, these fireballs are not going to be as useful because the armor smith makes up that difference. If you use Firelance Portal, your Medivh is also weaker, and your Firelance Portal does help you fight back on the board immediately. So right now he's weighing both those options in this spot here.
He does have a hard removal in the form of Frost Nova plus Shatter that he could save for an individual big threat, but he wants to be in the position where he's dictating the pace of this game. He wants to be trying to present the threats rather than reacting to what XHope is doing.
And what sets up best for the Medivh on the following turn here?
I mean, if his goal is just to open up Medivh, he could play Frost Nova Shatter plus his 2-cost Fireball and just clear the board. Right. That does use some pretty powerful resources like that Fireball.
Yeah. I think.
Doom Guard comes up the Firelance Portal.
That's massive.
It's about the best result you can get.
Yeah, it's a very beefy minion, and it has charge immediately deal damage there.
And we see kind of a pained look on XHope's face here because he's not happy to see that.
Oh, wait, hold on. He pulls out Alexstrasza. That could be a huge turning point of this game if he's able to shut down Neirea's burn opportunity. Neirea not happy to see that, but at least he still has Medivh.
The crowd, though, they love to see that. XHope fans out there.
And XHope, he said that even in tough positions, he has his hat, and he also has trust in his deck. He's got a lot of confidence because he says he just plays the decks that he plays, that he's played a lot, and has a lot of experience in. Go ahead and listen to what he had to say specifically about that.
I'm confident in the decks that I have brought to this tournament. If I had a second chance, I would not change them, except for maybe a small change in my priest deck.
Well, not really an issue. His priest is already out of the way, and that's a great start for the series, but there's a lot more work to be done. Plays the Stono Defender. No cheap options here. That's usually what you're looking for if you're trying to win the board very fast and swing the game. Considering that, the downside of the Dirty Rat is you have to deal with an 8/8 in play.
Yeah, and now Neirea is actually going to get pretty strong value off of this Flame Strike in his hand, which is a pretty poor card in the matchup overall, but he's effectively gaining 8 damage off of it because the Alexstrasza gets to connect to the face. And now XHope needs to deal with his Alexstrasza. I think XHope's original plan was perhaps to do Dirty Rat and then Brawl, but felt like, okay, maybe I can set up a reasonable board to protect me. Neirea only has the single copy of Flame Strike in his deck, but it was in his hand, and now XHope is once again in a tough spot.
Oh man, how do you deal with this now? Because with that Doomguard continuing to survive, it's been a lot of pressure onto the board. And, you know, we kind of talked about Medivh and how it summons a lot of minions for tempo. You know, one of the things we didn't acknowledge is what happens if Alexstrasza just gets you the difference anyways. Alexstrasza hitting twice is kind of like using its battle cry effect anyways. And XHope still doesn't have a clear-cut way to kill it outside of Brawl right now, and that's not even guaranteed.
Yeah, the Brawl here for XHope is pretty awkward. He could throw in a Ravaging Ghoul to give himself at least a marginally better chance of having a good outcome from the Brawl.
Oh, man.
I mean, I think that we might see him go for that because it's just, right now, this is such a bad spot. If either one of these connects, it's putting him in really dangerous position.
Oh,
he's running down to the wire here. The rope is burning.
Go for it? No, he pivots at the last second, plays Primordial Drake, and I mean that sets up Neirea for even more damage right now.
Yeah, he has the Frost Nova Shadow. We were talking about how this is not likely to be particularly powerful, but this is forcing through another 13 damage here, and XHope, he's in burn range already. Counterspell up for Neirea. Looking like there's not going to be a way out of this for the Chinese player.
Yeah, he's shaking his head. He's not happy with that play. That slam is, you know, not really anything that useful outside of triggering the counter spell at this point. Doesn't even get the draw. What can XHope do in this spot?
I mean, he has the Ravaging Ghoul that can kill the Doomguard, but there's still an Alexstrasza, and even if he can stop that with one of his taunt minions, there's 3 fireballs in Neirea's hand, and XHope has just 12 life. This game is over.
Trying to think if there's anything else that XHope can draw, but the draw is denied from Slam, and Curator is too much mana, so XHope's going to set up as best as he can for the next turn. But you're right, no matter what he does, Neirea can just use fireballs directly to end the game, and didn't even necessarily the discounted one either. Yeah,
because this discounted one, even if XHope were to armor up and be able to prevent the damage from the Alexstrasza hitting the face, Neirea has more than enough damage to end the game. Wow. And there it is. We were talking about this being a crucial game in the series, and it goes Neirea's way.
You gotta wonder, you know, should XHope have gone for that Brawl instead of just being a little greedy and going wider onto the board against a 5-attack Doomguard and 8-attack Alexstrasza at full health? That was risky, and it didn't pay off at all. Neirea wins a pivotal game in this series. Going down 0-2 with the even matchup would have been pretty devastating.
Yeah, and you know, that's we mentioned, you know, very crucial for both players here. You know, Neirea definitely taking the initiative in the series, and you know, we said that one is a very, very key matchup in this particular, well, matchup.
Yeah, and one thing that I really like too is Neirea was introduced with a lot of choices that game of how he wanted to navigate based off his hand, and you can tell that he's not only very experienced, but he also put a lot of time and practice into it. We've been talking about how he practiced with RDU, and we put a lot of hours into preparing for HCT Shanghai. We got a chance to talk to him about it prior to the series.
I play Hearthstone just like one day I can play 10 hours, one day nothing. So let's say I have 600 games per month. So how many hours is that? I'll do it. I'll do the math quickly. So let's say every game takes, let's say 8 minutes multiplied by 600. So you divide it by 60, right? Yeah, it's basically, it was easy. 80 divided by 30. That's a tough one.
Yeah, it's about 80. It's about 80 hours if you do the math according to him of how much he plays per month on average. And of course, it spikes prior to big events like Shanghai. Well, you know, compared to some of the other events, Neirea has been going week to week to so many tournaments. He's talking about Star Ladder. You're talking about the playoffs, and now going into Shanghai. The guy is a Hearthstone machine. And it's important to pace yourself. You're saying that he feels like he has a new look on this year specifically.
Yeah, we actually, when we talked to him at the Winter Championship, he mentioned that he was actually playing less long days of Hearthstone than he had in the past, and he felt like his more relaxed attitude actually had a lot to do with his improved results. And interestingly, I think that in this tournament, he's bringing a lineup that he's just very familiar with. We mentioned earlier that this is a lineup that is identical to what he played at the playoffs. So definitely has a lot of experience navigating all of these decks.
That's right. Neirea was grinding very heavily back in 2014 and 2015. You play ladder nonstop, would always kind of hold top 10 on both servers for Europe and North America. and was kind of one of those guys that put a ton of stock into results and performance, and almost felt like you were owed something because of how much time you invested into it. And it felt like that stressed him out too much. So what Neirea ended up doing, saying, I put so much time into this game, I kind of understand a lot of how it works. I'm going to still play, you know, a good amount to make sure I get enough points, but I'm no longer stressing about it as much as I used to, and it's done wonders for his psyche.
I think he may be stressing a little bit in this game. Has a pretty expensive hand without a ton of cheap removal, which is often what you're looking for against the Evolved Shaman deck.
Yeah, Evolved Shaman against Druid has typically been favored for Shaman. In general, actually, Shaman's always had the edge over Druid when it's been a little bit faster against a slower deck, primarily because they can leverage things like Flame Tongue Totem, dating back to even the aggressive Shaman days. XHope gets a pretty important totem here.
Cheers for Healing Stream.
Yeah.
At the moment, this isn't huge, but it does mean that even a swipe for Neirea, if he picks it up, won't clear off most of the board. The Hungry Crab tech for Neirea. Actually, he also played Hungry Crab in his Jade Druid deck at the playoffs. He has the Curator to fetch it with. So definitely a powerful tool against the Paladin decks that have been very popular, though there are not any in this particular matchup.
Yeah, and you know, one of the more interesting things too is about the split of the metagame differences. Well, one of the decks that seems to be a huge powerhouse in the Western scene is just the mid-range Warlock Paladin, and how much people fear that. I know a lot of Western speakers love Jade Druid, they love Burn Mage, they love all these controller slower decks, but they're always afraid of those Paladins. And Hungry Crab is primarily keeping that deck at bay. People said without Hungry Crab, that Murloc Paladin would be far and away the best deck in Hearthstone.
And we've seen, I think, one of the decks that's really oppressing it is the aggro Druid, because it does just naturally play Hungry Crabs. You know, not just like as a tech card in Jade Druid, for instance, but Hungry Crab having synergy with Mark of Yogg-saron and such. It's a very powerful card there. And I think XHope, he's going for the Evolve.
Oh boy.
Gets him. This is a very strong Evolve here.
Yeah.
Gets a couple of value minions with the Blood Mage Thalnos and the Shimmering Tempest, as well as just generally upgrading his board pretty well. But Hungry Crab finds a target.
Something I didn't pay attention to. Hungry Crab now gets value. Oh, a little bit funny there. And of course, a story of misconnections. The Gluttonous Ooze not going to hit that Jade Claws there, and XHope has an opportunity to press for a lot of damage this turn.
Yeah, and because of the pint-sized summoner there, he actually has a discount on his first minion. So there's a couple of different ways he can navigate this. Flame Tongue plus Jade Lightning is one possibility, though his minions aren't positioned in a way that are really optimal for the Flame Tongue, I think. He'd love to be able to just connect with, for instance, the Shimmering Tempest to trade it off and get value off of it.
Yeah.
Because it is a 1 health minion as well.
I guess I wouldn't be too upset with losing the pint-sized summoner. Your hand's not really minion dependent as well, so I think that's also a candidate for potential trade-off. But like you said, you know, the Shimmering Tempest is also very frail to a swipe or a Wrath, even though one Wrath
XHope could even just double trade the left side of his board and then play Firefly to replace that side of the Flame Tongue. So he plays the Flame Tongue between pint-sized summoner and the Swamp Ooze, or I guess between the two power minions anyway. Doesn't really matter. He's going to go for a Devolve. This is pretty powerful because it does remove a lot of the buffs on each of those.
Yeah, I actually like this a lot better because it still allows him to play Flame Tongue and pressure. Wow, he's also picked up Bloodlust. He has to kind of play these minions fast. Did he get the Firefly in time? I think he did.
Yeah, I'm not sure he got, but I think he wanted to play the Flame Elemental as well because the Firefly was free. He may not have actually gotten the Flame Elemental to his hand fast enough. He does have the 1 mana. So yeah, he could have the full board if instead is missing 1 minion, but that Bloodlust is still very scary.
I wonder if that's going to be a difference maker. I mean, if Neirea goes for Jade Behemoth this turn, either way, he's got 6 health of Taunt. So he's at effectively 32. There's 7, 8, 11, 12, plus the 6 times 3, so that's 30. Plus the Jade Claws, is that 32? Am I counting it correctly?
There's the 18 from Bloodlust itself. He's certainly going to Bloodlust this turn. We'll certainly see that.
6, 12. It looks like it's 32. As long as the math checks out, he should have enough damage to push past his taunt. Bloodlust for the exact damage. Either way, you're cashing it in. It doesn't get better than this, Gibbler.
Yeah, I think this is going to add up quite nicely for XHope, who is taking a 2-1 lead in the series. Yeah, exactly lethal. Did not need that Flame Elemental that he missed last turn.
Ah, the crowd erupts. They're loving it. XHope is 1 game away from sending Neirea packing early, as he is taking the lead 2-1. Now, granted, it's been going his way based off of how the matchups have lined up, but it's that's kind of the way it should be going, right? Priest should be being the Jade Druid, Evolved Shaman should be being the Jade Druid. But, you know, how does his last deck here, Taunt Warrior, really fare?
It's tough because there's still very powerful decks against Taunt Warrior remaining in Neirea's lineup. The deck he was just playing, Jade Druid, tends to be pretty oppressive toward the success of Taunt Warrior. And I believe the remaining deck is Quest Rogue, which is another extremely strong deck in that matchup.
That's right. And if XHope's able to take it, he keeps China's hopes alive. And, of course, we're going to see 4 Chinese players play in a row. Coming up next, we have Kranich from Korea up against Dog from China. This is Kranich backstage right now. Looks like he's all smiles and jokes right now, but when he locks in, this guy gets intense about Hearthstone. A 2-time World Championship finalist representing Asia Pacific once again in the spring season of 2017. It'd be really cool, to say the least, to have Kranich appear 3 out of 4 years in the World Championship. That's kind of an unprecedented run there.
Yeah, Kranich is a player who we have seen quite a bit of over the years. He had a little bit of a quiet 2016, and that was pretty hard on him because especially the Korean fans of esports are very, very passionate and very opinionated, and they respect success. And when Kranich had so much success and then failed to do so once again the following year, you know, he was getting people asking, you know, are you washed up? Is it over for you? So he'll have a chance to put that behind him, hopefully, in the next series.
His limelight was largely stolen by Handsome Guy and Dahyoni as kind of like the 2 Korean stars from 2016. But he wants to remind people that he is a player to watch out for. And we'll see that coming up next after this series, which could go 1 or 2 games. Neirea is getting into the pose. I see it. The pensive focus here as Neirea is going to turn once again to Jade Druid, recognizing that Taunt Warrior is his best matchup by a big margin. As long as you play it correctly, there are ways you can mess this up. One of the ways that Taunt Warrior can exhaust a Jade Druid of resources is a path to victory.
Yeah, there are a couple of ways that you can play this from each side. And for the Taunt Warrior, in many cases, you really need to accelerate to the quest because you can't play a typical attrition game when you're playing the Taunt Warrior against Jade Druid. Obviously, the threat of Jade Idol, just along with, in particular, Gadget and Auctioneer, can just generate so many threats that you really need to get the Sulfuros and Die Insect online very quickly. Neirea's hand here is not very good. He does not have Wild Growth. He does not have Jade Blossom. And we see just how the classes have been performing there overall. Druid is by far, well, not by far, Shaman just behind it. It is, you know, by far one of these the top winning decks. I was looking down a little bit lower there.
Yeah, if you compare it to
1%.
Druid and Shaman, by far,
yes,
are outperforming
decks,
the
sure.
other decks. Rogue kind of sitting there just above even, but one of the interesting points has been Mage for me. I always expected Mage to be a little bit better, but maybe because Mage is largely considered to be one of the best classes, if not the best class in ungoro, that's being heavily targeted.
And this game, not looking good for the Druid, though. Despite the 64% win rate overall, this is one of those games that's on the lower side of the spectrum here for Neirea. No Wild Growth, no Jade Blossom, a handful of expensive cards, and XHope with the Defender into Defender is getting the chance to accelerate his quest very quickly.
Right, but he still has a lot of mana in order to get to that point, and Neirea does have the Auctioneer in hand. That's a really important draw. Jade Blossom into whatever he wants to play, the Jade Behemoth, and get his Jade Trains going. That is one of the most important cards. In fact, Jade Blossom is the highest win rate card, not only in this matchup, but in Jade Druid overall behind Eye Black Ball.
That's not really surprising.
I mean, what's really surprising, too, is just like how much of a significant difference it is when you draw like Jade Blossom versus not. I mean, you would kind of say, okay, I still have Wild Growth, but Wild Growth win percentage is a clear 10% lower than Jade Blossom,
really?
Which is shocking.
Wow, that is shocking. I had not heard those numbers before, but that, you know, the combination of everything that the Jade deck wants, increasing the Jade counter and accelerating your mana, it makes sense. Neirea now is getting to the point where he has the tools he needs. He's been able to ramp a little bit. His Jades are still pretty small, so he needs to try to maneuver these turns to establish a significant board presence, but not commit too many resources for XHope to clear off with, say, Brawl, before XHope is able to get into his quest turns.
Yeah, but I mean, if a hand is full for Jade Druid, it still kind of limits them by mana. So that's one of the things XHope has to consider here. You know, I know that he has, you know, Primordial Drake in hand. How do I best play around it? I don't want to make my board clear. I'm the one trying to pressure him. And I guess one of the downsides of having the Primordial Drakes is just that how clunky they are mana-wise. He wants to finish his quest as fast as he can, especially because Jades are still just a 2-2 right now. But he can't do it.
Picking up the Armorsmith for XHope means you can play Armorsmith into Sleep with the Fishes and clear off the Curator and the Jade Behemoth, as long as he gets the second attack in, rather, with the Direhorn Hatchling.
Right. Well, it's a little awkward sequencing-wise.
It is. He has to attack in with the Stonehill Defender first, then get the Sleep with the Fishes off. XHope really taking his time in these games. He has gone back and forth between plays a number of times.
Yeah, and of course, we know Dirty Rat is even weaker, considering that not only does Neirea have the guaranteed Primordial Drake, but he also has the guaranteed Hungry Crab. So you know that the Dirty Rat might not do anything significant. What you're really looking for is to pull out a Gadsand Auctioneer, and the second best candidate is something that summons a Jade. Aya Blackpaw, a huge card in this matchup because it does everything you want. It puts pressure, it ramps up your Jades twice over, and you know, Warrior can't deal with it efficiently a lot of times if they don't have a big board because it plays around Brawl too. Yeah,
the fact that it protects you from Brawl is truly huge in this matchup because you generally need to create a board as Jade Druid, but don't want to invest too many resources. And if you do get Brawl, it's like, okay, I have to start over. But if you have Aya, you don't have to start over at all. In many cases, you'll be leaving a gigantic Jade here. Though right now, the Jades for Neirea are still relatively small.
Yep, and that's a nice pickup too. We're talking about how Taunt Warrior needs to get that card draw resource. This is a large reason why Kalento did popularize the Battle Rage version of it. 2 #1 legend on both servers back just a month and a half ago. And XHope picking up more resources like the Sleep with the Fishes and the Executes will be really nice. But again, he's kind of has to weigh, what's the timing for this Dirty Rat? If I Dirty Rat and pull out the Auctioneer, I can't even necessarily deal with it immediately because I don't have the ability to execute it.
Yeah, and Ravaging Ghoul just kill his own minions right now, and he potentially love to save them to combine with Sleep with the Fishes. He actually doesn't really have any particularly clean plays this turn that line up very well against what Neirea has on the board.
Now, maybe the opposite of what we're talking about may help him. Because he knows Hungry Crab and Primordial Drake is in the hand, he has a higher chance of pulling those minions than an Auctioneer.
It's true. And there's also just the very important consideration for XHope that he needs to actually get his... Wow, I'm really surprised to see this. He really needs to get his quest going online. He actually missed his armor up.
Oh boy, oh boy.
Wow, XHope clearly under a lot of pressure in front of this hometown crowd.
And it's dead silent here after witnessing what is pretty much just an objective misplay. You really need to get that armor up count because you never know if that pressure from Druid is just a little bit too much.
This is also really rough because this is his only cheap activator for his Execute or for his Sleep with the Fishes. He has the Primordial Drakes, but those are difficult to weave into in a turn alongside those. And now Neirea, after a pretty poor start, is taking pretty solid control over this board.
Yeah, and a lot has to do with his ability to hit card draw and his ramp at the same time. Jade Druid really needs to budget out their resources as well, which is why I really like that Neirea used his Feral Rage for armor, because he recognizes he has Gadsand Auctioneer and Nourish. Very unlikely that he's going to be able to find a way to squeeze in Feral Rage very mana efficiently, even for removal purposes.
All right, well, XHope does have the Primordial Drake and is able to clear off Aya and the smaller Jade.
Yep. And one thing that is going for XHope is he still has double Dirty Rat and Brawl coming up on next turn. So if Neirea doesn't commit to an Auctioneer turn right now, which is looking like he can or can't, depends on what he feels like, because he does have Nourish as an alternative. XHope does have that play, but Neirea senses that this is the opportunity to go for it.
Sending Jade Idol to the deck, and the Wrath, he can even cycle the Wrath here if he wants to trade both of his minions.
I like it, I like it. You really want to increase your chance of hitting another Jade Idol this turn.
Oh, and yeah, we saw come up the top of the deck, so Jade Idol going to keep ramping Neirea's Jades, and so it's card draw with the Auctioneer. Now Neirea has really hit a very critical point. His Jades are out of range of the Primordial Drake plus Sleep with the Fishes. They're now 6/6.
Right.
So if you get to the late stage of the game and Primordial Drake plus Sleep with the Fishes clears your board, that's very weak. But now XHope's board clearers really are only brawls.
Yeah. Although XHope can now finish the quest and go for the Dirty Rat Brawls. Pulls out Gluttonous Zeus, so at least his Sulfuris will be untouched by that effect. He's thinking about if he wants to pull another one. He knows Primordial Drake's in the mix. He knows Hunger Crab's in the mix. So in his mind, it's maybe a 50% chance of pulling something really good or something really weak.
One of the really important things here is just XHope having a chance to get the Dirty Rat effect to complete his quest as well, without necessarily running the risk of Neirea just having something in play after Brawl.
You're absolutely right, Gibbler. It pulls out a Primordial Drake. That could be a big moment, depending on what lives and what dies off this Brawl.
We're going to have a fight here. Who wins the Brawl?
XHope hoping for any of the Dirty Rats. The Chinese fans are waiting in anticipation. Is that the Auctioneer?
Auctioneer wins the Brawl.
No!
That's a disaster for XHope.
XHope's chance to win this game has dwindled to the single digits, in my opinion, because Neirea is able to have a full, uninterrupted turn of gadgets and adultery. This is just going to be a violation of every taunt warrior race.
This is just
Fandral as well?
a mauling. Neirea is going to make a gigantic board, draw so many cards, and XHope does not even have a second Brawl to deal with the results of this.
All right, well, you know, fortunately for XHope, there's no Jade Idol being picked up, which means that Neirea couldn't do the crazy Fandral, Jade Idol, Jade Idol, Jade Idol, and just continually pack it onto the board.
It's still pretty bad.
It's still really
pretty
bad.
bad. You can try and sugarcoat as much as you want, but that was a disaster for XHope.
How does XHope get out of the situation, if at all? He's got his Sulfuris, but doesn't even have a way to guarantee the execute activation outside of Primordial Drake.
And this is what we were just talking about, how Neirea's Jades are now too big. He has Primordial Drake plus Sleep with the Fishes, but that just kills Auctioneer. Every other minion on the board lives through it, which just means that Neirea can keep the pressure up next turn.
And I will say that this is probably the most lopsided matchup in this entire best-of-5 set. Jade Druid versus Taunt Warrior, assuming that both players are playing at optimal and having an average set of draws, will be vastly in favor of Jade Druid. One of the most lopsided matchups you'll see in the current metagame. Some players are even pegging it as 90-10, like more one-sided than the old Freeze Mage Control Warrior days.
It's a bold claim.
It's a bold claim, but I think it's hyperbole for how helpless they feel sometimes as a Taunt Warrior when Jade Druid just really gets any kind of card draw and ramp in combination.
There's another Auctioneer.
As if he needed it.
As if things were not bad enough. I don't even know that Neirea needs to go ahead and Auctioneer this turn. He can fire off the Fandral plus Nourish. He's very likely to find more copies of Jade Idol at this point. I believe he has 5 in his deck. There's another one. Just keep making more Jades, putting more Jades in his deck.
Yeah, this is all but over. XHope is basically waiting to see if Neirea will overextend onto the board. He can get a Brawl, maybe use Sulfuris, but now the Jades are even out of range of the Die Insect hero power.
This is really just Neirea figuring out, exactly how do I want to kill you. It's not really a matter of if, it's when.
Yeah. How do I set up a 2-turn lethal? How do I prevent throwing? He's playing around second Brawl, just doing his due diligence, and XHope is pretty much just dead. He can go ahead and stall for a little bit longer in case he wants to show more cards to his opponent there, or maybe rack up some experience points on his warrior class.
I mean, these are tournament accounts, so they actually aren't particularly high level.
That's right.
It's why you see, minion with stealth cannot taunt when it pops up for the first time in the tournament.
That's right. That's right. All right, let's see one for the road here.
I mean, you gotta throw a fireball. If you can throw a Ragnaros fireball, you've gotta throw one. It's just, I think it's actually the law. And you know what? Let's go face. XHope gets an 8 damage, and then he concedes. We're going to game 5.
I'm all for the role playing, Gibbler. Game 5 should come down to the Taunt Warrior versus the Quest Rogue, and this is why it was so pivotal for Neirea to win that even Mage versus Warrior matchup, because he knew that he'd have the counter pick advantage going for the rest of the series. Still doesn't mean it's unwinnable, but I mean, Quest Rogue is favored against the Quest Warrior.
It is. There are tools for the Warrior to be able to win the game. If the Quest Rogue, frankly, the Quest Rogue needs to have a pretty bad draw in order for the Warrior to have a particularly good shot, because if the Quest Rogue doesn't have the tools to complete their quest, or they don't have the resource generation minions to complete it with, say Igneous Elemental or Novice Engineer, if they're forced to, because of the quality of their draw, bounce things like Glacial Shard to complete the quest, that's really the best road to victory for the Warrior.
You know, the Quest Warrior also has just the ability to sometimes put a significant amount of pressure onto the Quest Rogue, but we'll see. I kind of wonder here, you know, what's going through XHope's mind? Because remember, he's the one who kind of talked up about playing decks that he's comfortable with, but many people kind of criticize his lineup, saying his lineup's a little bit weak, has a lot of holes in it.
And he's really seemed like he's off his game today. We saw just that missed hero power. We saw him really seem to vacillate back and forth between different options in a number of turns. And I wonder if the stress and the pressure of playing in front of this Chinese crowd is getting to him. Oh, Neirea's hand, double Igneous Caverns Below. Well, there's the attrition plan that I was talking about. That's out the window, and Neirea has the tools to at least last a long time. The problem for Neirea's hand right now is he has no bounce effects. So, well, I guess actually with these Igneous, you don't really need the bounce effects. But XHope could potentially take the road of trying to just not kill them, which is a very interesting thing. He also has Dirty Rat, and Dirty Rat on the Igneous element, or rather on the Flame Elementals off of the Igneous, can be a very impactful effect.
Yeah, Dirty Rat is one of the only ways. I think it might actually be the only counterplay, true counterplay card to Quest Rogue. People can consider like weapon removal or maybe something, but Dirty Rat is it, and it's not even that reliable. And I like that XHope's kind of recognizing, I need to kind of see what's in his hand first. I need to identify what he's trying to hold, because clearly he's not going to bounce all four things at the same time. I can really adapt to what the situation is and try to play the percentage.
Stonehill finding, he could go for the curve option in the Senjin Shieldmaster. One of the problems with that is that Igneous can just attack into it and die, which is something that sometimes you're trying to avoid. You don't want to give your opponent an easy way to kill their own Igneous element, as bizarre as that sometimes sounds.
And, you know, the more I see it, the more I do think that XHope has kind of a game plan here. He's got the ability to Dirty Rat Brawl turn 7. And, you know, he's got ways to draw cards so he won't be sitting duck for too long. And if he's able to kind of drain the resources out of the rogue, I mean, Mimic Pod is a great card, but what if Mimic Pod whips and hits, you know, another backstab, for example, and then all of a sudden Neirea has nothing else going on. This is still a winnable game here for XHope, but it's looking kind of bleak.
Primordial Drake, that, if he does get to the late game, is very powerful asleep with the fishes, but we're 5 turns away from that being an option here.
Maybe that's indication for XHope to start drawing cards. He's got Battle Rage, or he can play the Ally Armorsmith. I wonder how important it is to set up the Armorsmith now versus potentially absorbing 2 5/5 hits later. Oh, it's kind of close. You know, the Battle Rage just makes you also a little bit off curve, so you're not exactly guaranteed a good play. So maybe he wants to value the mana efficiency and just play the Armorsmith this turn.
Definitely an awkward spot for XHope here. He knows that Neirea, because of these 2 Igneous Elementals, can just have the tools to complete his quest. I mean, both of these Igneous can just attack into Senjin, and he can just play out 4 Flame Elementals and the quest is complete.
Right, and he can actually prep the quest.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah, Neirea,
wow, are you serious?
Neirea has the tools to just make 4 5/5s this turn.
XHope clutching to his hat for consideration, asking him, what do I do? You don't really do much in this position. You just hope that he can't find a way to finish his quest. And Neirea's got all the tools, all the answers.
Let's make sure he coins and preps in the right order.
Dude, how crazy would that be? What an epic misplay that would be.
There it is, coin plus prep.
I think Pavel owns the record of like the worst misplay in the high stakes tournament. Neirea would take the cake with that one with the prep coin. The arena is silent right now as XHope could be staring at his last game of the tournament and would be the first Chinese player to fall here.
And now, you know, we mentioned that one of the roads to victory for the Warrior can be exhausting the resources of the rogue. And here, XHope has Brawl. He could use it. There's still Swashbuckler plus Brewmaster remaining in Neirea's hand, along with a Mimic Pod.
The patches that comes out.
Yeah, so there's just a lot of tools that he has, and XHope, I think, recognizes that he needs to... Cornered said you're not so good against the quest.
Summon 3 5/5s for your opponent.
A little awkward.
Yeah.
Yeah, XHope is just going to hide behind these taunt minions here, trying to accelerate to his quest, and hopefully make Neirea commit a little bit more here.
Well, that's one of the things too. XHope, you know, mulliganed his quest away, so he doesn't have the counter going.
True, yeah.
So he's only trying to win through the fatigue.
I literally only just noticed. Oh my god! Yeah,
that's not what you want to see if you're a Chinese fan. Neirea picks up double Novice Engineer. That should be plenty of gas along with the Swashbuckler. Oh man, I mean, this is looking bleaker and bleaker by the turn. Neirea's even feeling comfortable, kind of sitting back, you know, massaging himself.
Yeah, he's moved away from the tunnel vision, hands-on head pose to the, all right, let's do this pose. Is that a smile on Neirea's face? I think that's a smile. No, it's gone.
If it only were for just a moment, Neirea experienced happiness, maybe relief. And on the other side, anguish, despair. What does XHope really do in this situation? He wants to hold on to his Brawl. He knows his opponent's also holding on to a Flame Elemental. You know, the Dirty Rat landing on a Pirate on the Swashbuckler will actually be pretty nice, so that way he can force the maybe patch to be drawn in the next couple of turns. But XHope's going to try to hold on to it as long as he can here. Here's another question. You know, how does XHope even get card draw off Battle Rage now that he didn't cash it in a few turns ago?
Yeah, this is really looking very grim for XHope here.
Yep.
He's trying to play a resource battle against a deck that just reloads constantly, has ways to draw extra cards off of its minions, ways to bounce those minions to draw extra cards.
Yeah, and even if he did keep the quest, let's assume that the far left card like Dirty Rat or something was gone. He'd still also be far away from the quest. He would only have 4 out of 7, which he doesn't have a guarantee of getting there.
Charge is a really interesting draw. He can actually play another minion and charge it into the Ali Armorsmith here.
Yeah, I guess it's
kind of neat.
It's kind of neat.
He can punch through a dot that way.
I think he's actually worried about overextending at this point.
Yes.
And also, I think Neirea is considering a way to potentially draw into a kill, even if XHope clears his board.
Yes, and here Neirea is in such a comfortable position that he's just sitting back and not overextending into anything. He recognizes that XHope doesn't have a clock on him, and he can just take things slowly.
XHope picks up ways to draw cards, but he's staring at 21 damage, knows that patch is in the hand. I think, interestingly enough,
What now?
XHope would not die if he went for a very greedy play here of drawing cards. Or even I think he should be okay. And maybe he's tempted to maybe Dirty Rat Brawl because he knows that patch has just got Shadow Step, so he's trying to maybe disrupt a plan to kill his opponent. The problem is that even if he Dirty Rat Brawl, he wouldn't have the insurance of the Primordial Drake and the Sleep of the Fishes if he drew it next turn, which is why it's important for him to draw as well. Oh, man, this is one of those tough situations. Again, you're limited by the card draw resource. And when I was watching Kalento play this deck a lot and piloting it on a stream, he was just talking about how, or he wasn't really talking much.
I was gonna say, Kalento doesn't talk that much.
But he was kind of demonstrating just how important it is to line up your Battle Rage draw. There's a reason why it's a one-of, because when you time it correctly, it is one of the most fundamentally important cards in your deck, along with Acolyte of Pain.
Yeah, the resource battle is very real here, and Neirea is very much ahead.
Yeah, and XHope played, for the tempo in a matchup where he threw away his quest. Where usually the way you win through tempo in this matchup is the weapon and the hero power.
I actually, until you had mentioned it, I just hadn't even noticed that he'd mulliganed the quest because the idea that you would mulligan the quest was so foreign to me.
I don't hate mulliganing the quest, but he's not playing the resource for it.
Look at this charge. Appropriately, it's a pirate getting charged.
Yeah, and appropriately, he's gonna die in the next turn or two. Neirea going for a prep advantage to summon everything back. So the resource plan is out the window because Neirea's got ways to generate so many cards here. XHope probably thinking about what off the top shelf he's going to order after this game.
Whirlwind, that's really not enough. He can try and pick up some cards here. Finally, he's actually below his starting life total, so he could battle rage for a card at this point, just off his life. But yeah, it's really not going to be nearly enough. Neirea with 7 cards in hand, and 3 of them generate additional cards.
Yeah, and the more important thing is, XHope's kind of counting how much damage he knows Neirea has, and he knows the Brewmaster in the patches return, so he's counting 25, 26. He can draw to see what he can get. He can try to get very lucky off a Brawl, but it's still looking very grim and holding on for a shred of hope. It's the last game of either player's tournament lives here.
So going to the rope once again, he has really been uncertain in a lot of points in this match. Does hit a Brewmaster. Can the Rat survive?
It's his only chance of sticking to this game if the Dirty Rat survives. It's not going to be it. Neirea's going to put on a lot of damage. 1 bounce. Oh, actually, no, he lost the
Brewmaster. The bounce effect.
Okay.
So his well, there's another one.
Yeah. He needs to find
one
more.
more, and he has lethal damage.
I hope you like my invention.
Does. Doesn't have enough mana to
He's
play
1 mana short now, so still, he may not have the game won this turn, but he has it all but won in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah, Neirea can even extend onto the board, but chooses not to just for posterity's sake, wants to remain vigilant and play technically on point here. XHope can try to draw a last-ditch effort here.
He finds a Sleep at the Fishes here. He can try to clear the board, but even if he clears the board, there's triple Patches attack coming next turn. There it is. Sleep at the Fish will keep him alive, but he has no mana left to armor up, and the Patches plus 2 Ferrymen will be enough to seal the match for Neirea.
It's a little too late, and we're talking about Battle Rage. What if he was able to draw a little bit deeper? He didn't play it the entire game. The 2 cards he would have needed would have bailed out the situation with Sleep the Fishes and the second Brawl. Neirea is going to survive and move on to the decider match, eliminating China's first player in XHope.
Yeah, and we see it on XHope's face there. This must be just a brutal loss for him. It was a brutal group, frankly. The winner of this, Neirea, is moving on to face Muzzy, of all people, in the decider match later today.
What a stacked group and a great series overall for entertainment's sake. There's a couple of missteps here and there, but in the end, you got to feel like both these players have a lot of unfinished business, even if they won this game. Neirea still as yet